Hola, it's Rachel from Wait Que, your Spanglish podcast de confianza. When we started this podcast, I had no idea how much work went into it. Recording, editing, designing logos, managing socials. Each day brought a new challenge. Starting something from scratch is exciting, pero it can also be very overwhelming. That's why I wish I had something like Shopify back then. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and it's also perfect for anyone getting started. Build your online store with Shopify's professional templates, and let their AI tools help write descriptions, polish photos, and generate headlines. Shopify's got your back with inventory, shipping, returns, and all the not-so-glamorous parts of running a business. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your site. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/sonoro. Go to shopify.com/sonoro for more information.
Sonoro. Hi, Tamarindo listeners. We know all of us are facing so much uncertainty, including economic uncertainty. This is making it even more challenging for people who may be looking to shift careers or advance in their career. To help us navigate this, we speak to Michelle Seijas, a trauma-informed coach, about how to make career moves that align with our values and pay us our worth. Listen to this episode if you want to know what to ask yourself before exploring a career move, you want to know how to handle a disappointing review, or the steps that you can take to bring in more of what you want in your career and everyday life. Michelle joins us as we answer listener questions about career pivots and also share some of our own experiences around career moves. But before we do that, we check in about how we're feeling given the ongoing assault on our communities. Let's get started. Welcome to
Tamarindo Podcast.
Hosted by me, Brenda Gonzalez, a fitness coach, political nerd, and nonprofit capacity builder.
And me, Delsy Sandoval, a Guatemalan-American licensed therapist and passionate creativity advocate. Together, we're here to uplift our community through powerful conversations with changemakers, creatives, and healers.
Each week on the pod, we talk politics, culture, and personal development. Listeners call Tamarindo the Advocacy and Self-Love Podcast. Vámonos! Let's start the show. All right, so Michelle, I want to welcome you, and Delsy, good to see you again. Welcome to Tamarindo.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting and having a good time with y'all today.
Yeah, so as we normally do, we do a little temperature check, or qué pasa, how we are doing. And maybe I'll start with you, Delsy, and then we'll go to Michelle and I can share how I'm doing. But Delsy, how are you? This, by the way, listeners, this is going to be our last episode for a while. We're taking a little bit of a break, but Delsy, how are you?
You know what? With everything going on in the world and also things happening personally, I know the audience is aware that I'm expecting a baby, and at any moment now, by the way, because I've hit that 9-month mark. I feel like this incredible need to be present all the time, kind of hour by hour, because it feels so heavy to think of the long term or to start planning for weeks ahead. It feels like there's so much unknown. And so I've been very much kind of lingering in that hour by hour. And it's been helpful, and also important to note that when major news happens in that hour, it's sort of like a grounding exercise to remind yourself that you're okay in that moment. And I think that's where I've been. And
Michelle, how are you? What's your vibe? To quote one of my favorite shows, which is called Vibe Check. But yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, I actually had a friend who sent me that last night, and I sent her a long voice memo this morning. So I kind of like got it out this morning. But I think the bottom line is I've just been learning how to live with all the feelings happening in the moment and not feeling the need to kind of pull one or only be in one. So there can be a moment of complete joy that then turns into a moment of maybe some shock or some fear that then could be a moment of gratitude that then could have a moment of guilt. And I feel like it's just navigating all of those emotions, and they can all be happening within an hour. And I think it's been happening enough now, unfortunately, but fortunately in that I'm learning to just be able to let them all exist at once and not feel like there's one thing that has to be the vibe for the whole day. So I could have 5 different vibes in this conversation and then have a whole different vibe by the end of it. And that's just learning how to be more human in the moment that we're in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, everyone's navigating so much, and you all touched on things that resonate with me. Just the reminder, actually somebody shared this. There's so many, sometimes we get a lot of inspiration and pseudo therapy through social posts, but somebody posted something that said, and I think it was like 4 reminders to kind of keep us grounded. One of them was doing that assessment that I am safe right now, because a lot of us are not really feeling safe when we let ourselves think into it. But one of it is just like touch yourself right now. Are you safe in this moment? Reminding yourself if you are, when you are, and then knowing that you can change your mind. You have the power. Your mind can change. And so that's also helpful. So you're not, if you're feeling that anxiety, you're feeling that fear, it doesn't mean that it's a permanent feeling. And there's a couple other in there that I'm forgetting at the moment, but I think those were the 2 that have been helpful to me, is just doing that assessment to know that I am safe in this moment, and to know that even if I feel a lot of dread right now, it doesn't have to be a permanent feeling. So those are the things that are helping me, kind of just get through the news, right? The news cycle and the assault on our communities that we are witnessing, and that I know sits very heavy on all of us. So we've done our temperature check. We checked in, and I'm sure you all are feeling similarly. So we're going to dive into a cool conversation around careers. But before we do that, we want to get to know a little bit more about Michelle. So Michelle, before we begin, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey into coaching?
Yeah. So I started out as a bilingual education teacher. This was definitely not on my career list. It was not anything I was thinking about. I don't even know if I fully knew what it was until I actually got into it about 8 years or so. So I started out as a teacher, thought I was going to be a teacher my whole career. At some point, was encouraged very heavily to move into leadership, then started dreaming about a life of leadership and moved into administration, high school principal, and I was doing a lot of the box checking. Okay, I was a teacher, I was an administrator, I'm a high school principal, I'm going to be a superintendent someday. And so that was the journey I went on. And the teaching is still with me. I think if you start out as a teacher, you're forever a teacher. So as a speaker, I use a lot of my teaching philosophy, a lot of the things I know about that. But those years in K-12 and the journey to becoming a superintendent meant I also worked on my doctorate. And I think that gave me the philosophies and the foundation to now know how I want to work with people. And so my research was on the systemic devaluation of Latino students in our schooling system. And so I think my own personal experiences as I got a little wiser to I spent a lot of my K-12 years assimilating and changing who I was as a Latina, because I was in GATE classes, AP classes, advanced classes, and often one of a few, if not the only, then kind of reclaimed self in college, then started making sense of what I was seeing my students experience that was very similar to what I had experienced. And what I've come to now evolve into in this practice of being able to coach and mentor people is I started to realize so many of us are on these journeys of hiding who we are for a good chunk of our lives. Then we follow the rules of get this job, get this degree, make some money, buy a house, and then you'll have fulfilled all of your ancestors' dreams, and then you'll be happy. That didn't happen for me. And I got a long list of Latinas I've worked with and talked to over the years that didn't happen for them either. And so I feel like now where I've landed is I want to provide these spaces for people of color and mostly Latinas to be able to really ask ourselves, what do I want? What was taken from me essentially through my childhood, my teenage years that I want to reclaim again? And how do I make that happen in all parts of my life, whether it be personal, professional? And so I think my own experiences and journeys, which we'll get into as we start answering a lot of these career questions, made me really curious. And then through that curiosity, through all that exploration, I found out that coaching was a way that I could help other people do the same thing. So I got certified in 2019, not really sure what I was going to do with it. And then like so many other people, the pandemic gave me this time to build a program and a practice. And now I get to do this full time, but forever a teacher at heart and forever somebody who's just curious about life and wanting to support more people to be on the journey of being curious with theirs.
Mm-hmm. And Delsy, does any of that resonate with you? Because I know you've brought this up a lot. Yes.
All of it. We're always talking about it. You know, this idea that there seems to be this blueprint that we all sort of silently understood of what our lives were supposed to be like. And I think some of that blueprint comes from this American narrative, and some of it comes from our Latin upbringing or our indigenous upbringings, or however you identify there. And I think when you're on that path so step by step, so clearly, there is this feeling of like achievement that feels really good in the moment. Like you feel like you're on the right path and everything is you're headed toward happiness and joy, and it keeps you going. It kind of like incentivizes you continuing on that path until you get there, or you get close and you realize, well, wait, what about my own personal thoughts, feelings, personality, sense of self, understanding of the world? It's almost like that didn't even enter your mind to become part of the narrative. And I think at that point, the confusion really sets in. Y ahora qué? Right, now what? And so I like this idea, Michelle, that you're talking about curiosity, because that's really, I think, the answer to that pivot, which I think we'll get into a little bit.
Yeah, and you all both outlined a lot of the factors that might contribute to us chasing those milestones. But another big elephant in the room is also just capitalism, right? We also need to earn the money to sustain what it takes to live in the US. And I want to kind of set the stage to where we are right now, because we're also seeing a lot. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not feeling very safe in the institutions right now. And we're seeing a lot of these protections being completely dismantled. So even some of the resources, the very limited, we already had a pathetic social support network in this country, but even that is getting completely eliminated. So I'm curious, Michelle, maybe this is showing up with some of your clients or as people are thinking about their career. Where's that showing up, this anxiety, this economic anxiety and this uncertainty that we're facing right now when it comes to, job security and that safety net?
You said it perfectly when you were giving the example earlier. I usually will pause people and say, what do you need to feel safe? So what do you need to feel safe to actually stay in the job for the next few months? What do you need to feel safe to quit the job? What do you need to feel safe to be in the search process? And that can be a multitude of things. It could be actual feeling. It could be logistical things that you need, money, a home, certain types of things that you need to connect with. But a lot of times we don't ask ourselves that question enough. And our bodies are meant to keep us alive. So our body is automatically going to go to, I'm not safe and I'm going to die. And so our brains will immediately start to spin out of control and start thinking about all these different things that may or may not be real in the moment. So a lot of times I just tell people, let's just ground ourselves for a moment and let's see what you need to feel safe this week, in a month, and whatever else it might be. And sometimes we sit in silence because folks are like, I don't even know. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's start real direct. What do you need to feel safe tomorrow? Let's just start with like baby steps. And sometimes folks will immediately start thinking of things that have helped them feel safe in the past, things that are their biggest concern right now that they'll need to pivot to. So I think for each person, it's going to be different. But ultimately, hopefully you have some sense of the personal things you need to feel safe, along with the logistical things that you need to feel safe. And if you can at least make sure there's some level of your basic needs taken care of right now, you're in a place to be able to then start thinking more strategically or dreaming more about what else can happen in the future.
Yeah, great. That's helpful. All right. So we did ask our folks to submit some questions. And I know we've got a couple of listener submitted questions and some folks that submitted questions to you, Michelle. So we're going to tackle these together as a group. So one question that is sort of like at the starting point, what are those good questions to ask yourself before you consider a career pivot? Like what would be, it sounds like one of them is like thinking about assessing what you need to be safe, but what are some other questions? And Michelle, you can kick us off, but Delsy, please, what else comes to mind?
So I'm going to actually use an example of myself. Back in 2017, when I left K-12, I had zero plan. I had gotten a teaching credential. My whole first 15 years of my career had been teaching. I didn't know what life looked like outside of a K-12 institution. I just knew it didn't feel good anymore and it didn't feel right for me anymore. And the idea of being a superintendent was the last thing I wanted by the time I left. And in my safety situation, I had actually also gotten divorced. So I had actually had a little pot of money I had saved to be like, I got to make sure I can take care of myself, whatnot. And I decided, you know what, that safety net, that emergency fund, the emergency is I can't work in this job anymore. And so I had a certain amount of money, I had a certain amount of time. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, but I'm going to start telling people I'm leaving. And I always think of my dad because I remember, my parents never quit jobs. They were always adding more jobs, right? 2, 3 jobs at a time, whatnot. And when I told my dad, my parents, I'm going to quit my job, they were kind of like, so what were all the degrees? What was all that experience for? And I said, I don't know yet, but everything I've learned and everything I've done to this point will translate to something else later. And in the moment, they didn't really say much. But later, my dad turned to me and he said, ¿Qué quiere decir que you're going to go find yourself? And I was like, I actually don't know yet. I'll come back and answer that question later, but I just know that there's this part of me that just is longing for something else. So the thing I would say is when it comes to career pivots, you're likely already longing for something. You may not know what the answer is. You may not know where you're going, but you're likely already starting to, maybe it's getting harder to wake up in the morning. Maybe you're dreaming about a lot of other things, but chances are you're already getting some signals to yourself that it's time for a pivot. In my case, I was able to fully shut things off and take a sabbatical to like really sit with it. And the questions I ask myself that I offer to people now is, what do you actually really enjoy? What are the things that maybe when you were younger, you got to do that you don't get to do anymore? I actually used to do a lot of, God bless my parents, they needed a place for me to go when they were always working in the summer. So they put me in this like theater camp when I was a kid. And the local community college used to host something and you could drop your kid off at 8 a.m. and they could stay there all day long. I used to love theater and being on a stage and on a microphone. I do not have a singing voice and I'm not meant to be an actress, but there was something about that I started getting curious about again. And so what are the things you loved doing when you were younger that you want to bring back? How do those translate into adulthood? What are things that you actually love now, but you don't have enough time for and you wish you could do more of? So what are you excited about? What do you love? And what are you great at? Do you actually get to do the things that you're great at all the time? I'm really great at networking. I can meet put me in a room, I don't know anybody, I'll meet people, I'll get to know them, and then I'll start introducing them to each other. So how can I put myself in a place to do more of that? So the more we get curious and start trying to figure all that out, then we can better start dreaming about what we're actually looking for. And oftentimes, to what we started off talking about, we think our dream is a title. Oh, well, my dream is to be, and we start putting titles on things. What if there was no title and you literally just dreamt about this work life where you got to work with people you enjoyed, did things you enjoyed doing. And later then we're like, so what job title matches that? So if people could give themselves some space to be curious, and I get not everybody can take a couple months, maybe it's 5 minutes a day. Maybe you're just going to journal first thing in the morning or before you go to bed, or maybe you're just going to start taking inventory. What did I actually really enjoy today? And I would love for there to be more of that in my life. In whatever way you can, what do you love doing? What are you really great at? And what's the dream for what life could look like in the future will start to give you some sense of where you even want to pivot your career to next. And thinking outside of the box of it, the pivot has to be another title.
And Delsy, I know you've actually experienced doing a career pivot and you've raised this topic before about thinking about, what it is that I actually want, that works for me. What are your thoughts for someone that might be thinking about what are the things I should be asking myself when it comes to considering a move in my career?
Yeah, I think for me, the idea of a pivot was really important. That word in and of itself, it's like, am I pivoting towards something or am I pivoting away from something? And thinking about that in that structure really helped me. So for me, I started out with a lot of confusion about where I wanted to go when I decided that direct service and therapy was no longer for me. But I still felt passionate about that area and mental health in general in that industry. I wanted to be a part of it, but I didn't know how. And so the first question that was really helpful for me was like, well, what am I pivoting away from? What is it that I am no longer energized by? What are the things that drain me, that make me feel like work-life balance is impossible? And when I really confronted that, what it was that was causing me so much turmoil, I was able to kind of eliminate a lot of options instantly because they would things that seemed logical of like an adjacent pivot, an easy pivot, seemed to have a lot of the similar elements that were draining to me in this particular role that I was in. And so that helped me get started and start to be curious about, well, then in that case, what do I want to pivot toward? what energizes me, what makes me feel like it aligns with my values, for example, during a day. What kind of people do I want to be around who might work in those industries? And that's kind of what led me into sort of like the more like a larger scale programming aspect of mental health, which I'm very happy with now.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. I mean, for me, the idea of what aligns with my values is what prompted my big career shift from corporate America, and even in other times where I've been looking for opportunities, that is essential for me. It's like, am I at the end of the day, am I really going to feel good about doing this work? And that really cuts out quite a lot of quite a lot of job options. So even knowing what you want and also knowing what you don't want are both seem to both be very helpful in this. And the other thing I will say is that, like, I think, Michelle, you sort of talked about this. Not everybody's going to have the opportunity to take a 2-month sabbatical, but even, and maybe not everyone's going to have the opportunity to do a big career change. But if you could at least stay curious and identify those things that energize you, maybe it's a matter of building more time so that you get to enjoy those things, so that you get to fill that cup in a way. Okay, so let's pivot to the next. Speaking of pivots, let's pivot to the next question. So here's a question. Although I have transferable skills, how do I know if I need additional certification or training when I want to maybe enter a new field? Like, what's one of the ways that I could know whether I will need that? Let's start with you, Michelle.
I think a big part of anything you should be doing in your career from start to finish, whether you're pivoting or not, is building your network. So just getting to meet more people. And I know I have a lot of clients who are introverts who are like, that freaks me out. Like, you don't have to go be friends with everybody all the time, but, pop in, get to know more people who are doing similar work to you, just being able to engage, because it's going to help you not only to do better in the current role you're in, but then for something like this, if you want to pivot and change fields and you want to learn more about what that looks like, who can you tap into to be like, hey, can we grab coffee and we can chat? Can we get together so I can learn a little bit more about your journey to how you got to where you got to? I did this when I left K-12, and I remember I had a mentor who said, just have fun being an intern again. And so I emailed a bunch of folks and just said, hey, I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee and ask you questions about how you landed where you did, or hey, I can even just come alongside of you, consider me a free intern. I'd be happy to do some work alongside of you. And I had so many people who said yes. People love to talk about themselves. So message people and say, how did you end up where you're at right now? I would love to learn more about this, even if you don't know them. And I had somebody who was actually the executive director of a nonprofit. I didn't know a whole lot about the nonprofit world, but I thought maybe I could be a program manager. I really had no idea. And this person, by the end of the conversation, was like, you should have my job. And I was like, I could be the executive director of a nonprofit? And he was like, you totally could. And I was like, can you help me put the pieces together? And he started explaining to me how he had learned fundraising and how he had landed where he was and the ways. And I was able to then translate all the skills I already had that actually would translate into that new world, and then the things I would need to learn to get there. So hang out with your network, ask them questions, see if anybody can introduce you to the field you're trying to get into. Of course, you can Google all the things and see what comes up, but also hit people up on LinkedIn, DM people or reach out to people and just say, I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee, or I can come by and help you with something if you'll let me just explore more of your journey of how you ended up in this place. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who would say yes.
Yeah, a couple of things there. Doing this will help you. You might learn that one of the ways that person got to that dream job is that they did need to take a certain certificate, or maybe they didn't. But that's one way you'll get to answer that question. The other thing is that in your example where you spoke to someone who they later said, actually, you could be an executive director of a nonprofit. I think the value there of speaking to a real human is that, and I'm experiencing this myself, I've applied to a ton of jobs over the last 5 years, and that algorithm is not going to pick up what that person picked up from speaking to you, knowing that you actually do have those transferable skills. So that really underscores the importance of building that network, meeting people, because you can't rely on just the algorithm. So Delsy, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I would say if you're right at the very beginning of even thinking about this and networking seems intimidating or something because you're not quite sure yet if you're even interested, I think one thing that I would say is podcasts are incredible for this. So for instance, I know that there are conferences for almost any industry in the United States. There are very niche conferences that you can tap into online on YouTube and watch. So for instance, in my case, I wanted to go into economic development. I looked up like economic development summits, and I watched these videos and listened to these podcasts of people who'd been in the field, maybe a couple years, folks who'd been in the field for years, talking to each other casually about their industry with insider conversations. And that was really helpful because I knew at that point what it sounded like in my industry for people to talk about it casually. And so I got to really get a sense of what this world looked like. And that was helpful because then you understand whether or not you feel like you could be up in that panel one day having that conversation, if you see yourself there. So that would be my recommendation. Go online and just watch all their content.
Yeah, very, very helpful. I guess before we leave this specific, because it's literally this experience aligns with everything here. I am a certified personal trainer. And the reason why I don't do any personal training, but I am certified. I knew that I wanted to get the certificate and I wanted to feel legitimate because I am a group fitness instructor. Anyways, the way I was able to pass that exam, because it is actually very, very hard, was listening to a podcast over and over and over again. It was a series preparing you for that exam. So yeah, I have lived experience in what you all both have answered there. Okay, so what if you feel like you're doing a really, really great job, you're up for a promotion, but you get passed up for that promotion? How can we deal with that? And we'll start with you, Michelle, again.
I mean, first of all, there's a lot of emotion that comes with when you feel like you've done great work and you don't get a promotion. So first of all, feel the feels. You can be upset about it. You can be frustrated. You can be sad. Feel the feels first, because that'll help you to actually know, like, what was I truly seeking with that promotion? Was I seeking some sort of specific recognition? Was it about the money? Was it about the title? Like, what was the promotion about? And the way you're going to know that is if you actually sit with the feelings and let them pass through and connect with all of that. So I would say start there. Then from there, let's get into some technical stuff. What I have found for myself, I remember I had a job where I thought I was killing it. And I remember I went in thinking, like, I'm going to kill it in the review. And I went in and they were like, you're not meeting our definition of success. And what came out of the conversation was we had very different definitions of success. What I was looking at, and I was like hitting all those markers, was not the same thing that the person who was going to get to make that decision was thinking. So first off, has there actually been a conversation about what it looks like to get some sort of a promotion in the space that you're in? Are you defining success for yourself in the same way that the folks who get to make those decisions are defining success? So that includes having lots of conversations about it along the way. Because promotions aren't just because you sat in a seat for a certain amount of time. I think maybe in the past that's what it was. It's definitely not what it's like now. You can have somebody who's been there for 2 years who can get a promotion when somebody who's been there for 10 is not. So how can you get very clear for yourself, what am I seeking in this promotion? So you can advocate for that for yourself. And then ask them, what do you need from me to see that I'm ready to get that promotion, to get the thing that I'm anticipating wanting? And they might say, well, maybe you do need a certification. You're not certified in this thing that you need to actually make the move. Great, I can do that in the next 6 months. Are you all willing to pay for that? If not, I'll figure that out. And then you can kind of navigate together the time frame and great, I want to revisit this in that amount of time. Maybe it's, depending on what industry you're in, your sales aren't at the level that they need to be for us to consider you. Great, I think I can get them up 20% over the next 6 months. If I can hit such and such number, is that what you need from me to get the promotion? And maybe they're going to say yes. And then you do what you got to do to make that happen and you revisit. Now, if you do all of that, you meet the markers, you've both defined success and you're still not getting the promotion, then the question is that the place where you need to stay, or is there a place you need to move to actually get the promotion that you feel you deserve and you've worked towards? And it might be the new job automatically is that promotion, or it could be you go someplace where you have a commitment from the beginning that something will be able to happen in the next 6 months or a year. So feel the feels. Get clear on what exactly you're seeking from that promotion, and then you can get into all the logistics and the strategy of actually moving towards what logistically can get you that.
I completely agree with you, Michelle, especially the part around why did you even want this promotion to begin with? I think that sometimes it might feel like a rejection, but it's more of a redirection. This moment where you get to stop and think, well, what was I going to get from this? What was I really looking for? And I do think it's fair game to pull the people aside who did the interviews, who went through the process and say, I would like to request, a meeting to discuss why I didn't get it and where the gaps are in my skills and where I can be to get there, because that gives you a lot of information. When you have that follow-up meeting, you get so much information about whether or not your growth is going to take place at this company, is going to take place at another company, or whether or not you were even wrong to begin with about the direction you wanted to go. Because sometimes I think promotions can be misleading, right? So a lot of times it ends up being something that maybe you weren't looking forward to or surprising. And so having these follow-up meetings lets you really get a lot of information. I think people are nervous to call them too, to call that meeting. It's almost like you feel like, okay, they said no, so I'm going to move on, but you're 100% in your right to ask people for more information about what happened in that process. All right. And we have our final question from the audience here. I love this question. It says, my vision for 5 years from now is completely blank. I used to have an idea of what I'd do next, and now it's unclear. Help. I'd love to hear from you both, Brenda, Michelle. What do we think here? Your vision is unclear. Where do you go from here?
Well, I will tell you that I learned real quick that the 5-year plan doesn't always dictate what ends up happening. When I graduated from college and got my degree, I thought I was going to be a kindergarten teacher until I became a stay-at-home mom. Whew, that is so not the life I live. And so sometimes I think we get locked into who we think we are and what we assume is automatically going to happen. So I would say it's totally fine to not have a 5-year plan. It doesn't mean that you're now going to be floating out in the ether with no plan and nothing's going to happen for you. Again, I think I'm going to go back to, if you're clear on who you are and what you're trying to do in the world, that's your 5-year plan, 10-year plan, forever plan, because you'll always be seeking out the things that are meant for you so that you can have the most joy in the work that you do. You get to be really great at what you do because it's your strengths, and you get to feel like you're actually making an impact. So going back to some of those reflection questions from before, what do you want to feel in 5 years? Right now, I've been asking myself this question a lot, and the word that keeps coming up for me is free. Free can mean a lot of different things, but I know that ultimately 5 years from now, I want to feel more freedom than I do right now, whether it's personally or professionally. And, I've done some visualizations and stuff about it. What does it look like? And I actually did one with my coach last week, and I told her I was struggling because I kept getting a white light that would show up. I would see something and there'd be a white light and it kept washing out. And what came to me from that was, you know what? I can't see it right now, and that's okay. But I know that I'm seeking something else in the next few years. And as long as I have some words and some feelings to go with it, that might be enough right now until I can fill in more of the picture. So I sympathize with the desire to want to know and to want to see it. And I'm right there with you in that I can't see it right now for myself either. But I feel very clear on the things that energize me. Like Delsy was saying earlier, like I know what gets me pumped and excited. When I get on a stage and I'm speaking with people, like the adrenaline's pumping, I'm so into it. I love it. What that translates to in 5 years, I have some ideas about, but I want to constantly feel that feeling of being with people and being energized and helping people to be on journeys and learning. I'm going to keep following that feeling. I know what I'm really great at. I'm really great at being able to, like I said earlier, network and bring people together. Community is always going to be something that I'm doing. What that looks like, I still don't fully know yet in the next 5 years. I know I'm also really great at being an activator. I'm cool at being in places where I'm building the plane while I'm flying it. I don't always need to know. So also, I'm kind of comfortable being in this space. So ask yourself what you want to be feeling in the next few years. What's feeling good about right now? Do you want to just grow more of that? Or are you thinking there's something else that you're seeking later on down the road? And giving yourself space to just keep being curious. Eventually, I promise you something will fall into place. But sometimes the uncertainty of not knowing what maybe we before had a checklist and automatically knew. But if you had that checklist and automatically knew, but you weren't happy, it's time to try something totally different. And that might mean not having a clear vision, but just being able to answer a lot of questions and deeply knowing yourself so that you can follow it when it shows up.
Yes, I love that. Brenda, what do you think?
Well, a couple takeaways from Michelle's response. One is that I think it was a lot easier because earlier in everybody's careers, because it's so easy, right? It's like, get the degree, it is literally spelled out for you. So it feels like easier to visualize those 5 years, because often it's very much like a checklist. And I think what's kind of liberating is to maybe stop thinking about it as like the things I want in 5 years, and start reframing that as like, who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? So all the way the questions that you lifted up, Michelle, I think are really easy for us to, or not easy, I guess, or difficult to reflect on, but it's just like a mind shift. And the other thing too is I would say for anyone that's feeling this way, that they feel like their vision for 5 years is drawing a blank, I would say to just, allow yourself that grace, because it was a lot easier early in your career, because it is very easy. Like, I'm going to be level 1, whatever, level 2, it was a little bit easier of a path to follow.
Yeah. And I also think there's so much to say about flexibility. When you make yourself that mind shift that Brenda's talking about, I really connect to, because the moment that you allow yourself to let the world happen and to adapt to what's going on and really follow your instincts, I think so much more opens up. Right? A lot of times you almost ignore the signs, or you're ignoring the opportunities because you're so set on your 5-year plan that you might even, miss out on some really amazing things that could happen, like the idea of enjoying being an intern again. How many of us would ever imagine going from being, the principal or the administrator to saying like, I'm going to go back and be an intern? But that openness really allows for the experience of the world to surprise you, right? Allowing the world to surprise you. And I think that's the beauty of kind of being at this stage in your career.
I'm so glad you said that, Delsy, because I think for me, right, one of the limiting beliefs, or one of the challenges that I'm grappling with is titles, right? Is this feeling like I've reached these titles, I should only be going to the next title up. Whereas if you give yourself that freedom to be an intern, or to start, if it's a totally new industry for you, you might start at what may not feel like a parallel shift, right? You might start at the bottom or at a different level. And it's just allowing yourself to embrace that with joy and curiosity, and what that might open up, versus like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm now whatever again,
Yes. And where are those feelings even coming from? Like, because a lot of times it's external stuff, right? Where you're like, oh, my friends, my family, like people are going to think, that I have failed out or something. And it's really, this is such a personal experience. What you do with the majority of your time and the purpose of your life is such a personal thing that I think kind of drowning out that outside noise is sort of crucial for you to allow yourself to take those leaps of faith.
Yeah. I mean, drowning out the outside noise, I think, is the answer to all of this.
Yeah.
What did everybody else tell me I was supposed to do that I'm not doing anymore? What did I learn in school about myself that's not true, and I don't want to believe that anymore? And you're reminding me of I had a vice principal who was working with me for a while, and she was moving. She was going somewhere else, and they were offering her a vice principal job in a middle school. And she was like, well, that's a demotion. Why would I do that? And I said, and the scenario that she was in, she had gotten a personal call from the superintendent to offer her what she saw as the demotion. And I said, it's a demotion if they don't see potential for you in the future. But that phone call was showing you that there's potential for you in the future. So you just need to ask more questions about what it's going to look like to take this title that you don't really love, knowing that there's something else in the future. She's now the superintendent of that district. So like, sometimes it's also like, how do we, to your point, pivot all of these expectations and keep asking ourselves, is this actually something I want, or is this an expectation that's put on me and I can't release the expectation? Because that's a whole different journey than certifications and credentials and all the other things that you might think. A lot of times it's a lot more mindset work than the technical parts that we think it is.
Yes, I love that. A lot more mindset work. That's really what this conversation has been about. All right, everybody. We love that you were here with us through this conversation. And I hope that it inspired everybody to think about their own career pivot. On our end, we're going to have a major pivot because we're going to jump right into our rapid fire questions. We're so excited for Michelle to be a part of them. We're going to start off with our basura. So Michelle, I know that you know a little bit about this, but essentially, what do you want to just throw in the garbage this week? And if we want, we can start with Brenda to kind of help us set the stage.
Okay, I can give it a go. This is a silly one because we all know there's a lot of real garbage going on all around us, and that's never ending. But here's a silly one. Dogs kind of changing their demeanor as they age and getting really bossy. So my dog Frida, who is now 11 years old, when we adopted her, the reason we adopted her is we went to the pound and she just immediately like rolled over to her tummy and just told us like, you're the boss. I'm here to lead. You lead. I'm here to follow. And just the sweetest, most wonderful puppy. And that's exactly how she was. But now that she's a senior dog, she runs this house. Okay. She barks, very demanding to open the door when it's time for her to sunbathe. She's very demanding about that. She's like mean to other dogs. She demands treats. She has just gotten really bossy with age. And I've noticed this from her best friend, which is my parents' dog, Canelo. They're best friends. And he's gotten really grumpy and he's gotten really moody. And I'm like, what is up with these senior dogs? I bet underneath is that their bones are achy and, they've got that wiggly back leg, but I'm just noticing that this demeanor change with senior dogs. So that goes in la basura. Stay nice, dogs.
What's so hilarious about this is like, I have to say, my basuras are always so serious, like every week. And Brenda's are always so fun. And so this week I challenged myself to meet Brenda.
Have fun basura.
In a fun basura. So I'll get there. Michelle, go ahead.
Ooh, I think I'm going to get activated with mine. So y'all are in LA, so you can probably translate. The basura is the lack of parking etiquette in LA. So and the worst part is it always happens when I'm going to yoga. So then I also feel this, like I have to stay calm and zen in the midst of it because I don't want to be that person honking before I walk into the studio. But it happened to me multiple times this week. You get the ideal parking spot. You're like, bam. And there was this person the other day who I was trying to also be kind. So I was like, I'm going to just pause and not rush to park. And I'm going to let them go around me. They went around me and took the parking spot. And I was like, and then y'all, they walked into the same yoga class. It was like I was like, the universe is giving me an exercise today and like finding my zen no matter what. And then anyway, I've had a couple times that's happened to me this week. Yesterday I was trying to park in a hard neighborhood. Person was getting in their car. I was like, ooh, bam, I found the spot. And I sat there with my blinker on, I'm trying to take your spot. Sat in their car for, I don't know, a couple minutes. And then they got up and got out and left. And I'm like, you could have waved at me and been like, I'm not leaving or whatever. Anyway, it's also on my mind because I'm headed to LACMA tonight. And parking on Free Jazz Night is not.
Oh, yeah. Oof. I'm sending positive parking juju your way.
Yes. No basura tonight when I'm trying to park in LA, but it's been a thing this week.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. And you know what? What I was thinking about was that you said you were trying to be nice and trying to be kind. I think that behind the wheel of a car in LA translates to confusion. People don't think, oh, this is somebody being courteous and nice. They think, oh, she doesn't really want to park here, does she? I'm going to go ahead and take it. I don't know what happened, but do you remember, Brenda, the wave? In LA, we used to do the wave.
Oh, really? Like to wave people to take a parking spot?
No, if somebody let you in or somebody did something kind, you would show the wave in the mirror, right? You would say, thank you.
Yes.
Where has that been, guys? Where has that been?
I even forgot about it. You needed to refresh my memory. That's how long it's been.
What is happening?
You know what? That's so funny because I'm a NorCal girl who translated to LA. I still do it. And I always wonder, do people think because nobody seems to respond when I do it. And I'm like, I hope people don't think I'm actually like flipping them off or something. But I always kind of do like this. And I never get a reaction back. So I'm like, I guess it's just, I don't know. But maybe
I still do it. I live here and I still do it. So when we see each other on the street, Michelle, we're going to be waving, confusing the world.
If you see me pause, you'll roll down your window and be like, just checking, was that your parking spot?
Just checking. Are you being nice or you want to park here?
I love it.
What is my basura? Well, let's just pretend that I was cryogenically frozen. Okay, just for a moment, just for fun. Let's say that in the year 2000, I was cryogenically frozen and I was, woken up or awakened or however the correct way to say that is here in the year 2025. Why do I still recognize every single movie poster? Why? I am so sick of it. Guys, I'm going to rant a little bit about this. What is going on? I know the amount of creative people, writers, actors, people coming up with really cool stories, narratives, indie films. Why aren't we promoting those? Because these big companies, these big film industry people are going, well, we don't want to take a risk. So we're only going to back movies that we know for sure have an audience. So we're going to recycle films over and over and over again. And I cannot. We're driving down the street and every billboard is like Jurassic Park from the year 1998. Or, I don't remember this detective one that just came out. I don't know if anybody remembers the name, but it's from like the seven. Yes, Naked Gun from like the 80s. And then it's just this endless, Fast and Furious number 68. And I'm over it. Why do I still know? Why does somebody who has no experience being in Hollywood for 20 years still totally fine navigating the media scene? There's nothing to keep up with. And I feel like, every other form of media is not that way. Books, you need to keep up, right? Mm-hmm. Music, new every week. But these films, we've had it. I've had enough of the of the dinosaurs, and I'd like to see some creativity.
Yeah, we don't need another Superman, right? We don't need another Superman.
Superman, Brenda. We don't need another one.
Okay, I need a Superman. The thing is, it also recycles, the same primarily white roles. So yeah, we need new movies for sure.
Yeah, we've had it. Okay. Now, las matracas. What are we giving our matraca to this week? What do we love? What are we feeling good about? Let's start with you, Michelle.
I thought I had it, and then you said that, and I was like, what am I celebrating this week? I'm celebrating friendship. With all the heaviness that's been happening, the community stuff, whatnot, like I mentioned earlier, friends who've been checking in on me who are not in LA, who are just kind of like, how are you feeling? What's going on? I think I've sent so many 10-minute, 8-minute voice memos to people, just like dropping all the things and then like getting responses and love back. Was thinking yesterday, I kind of feel like getting out of the house, doing some stuff. And of course I get like texts today, and now I'm going to go to LACMA tonight, and there's some other stuff going on or whatnot. And just celebrating that friends help us to navigate these really difficult times, that they help us to have the hugs, have the affirmations, the things that we need in these moments, and just celebrating friendship and wanting more of that in my life. And also knowing that that's what helps us to navigate all these times.
I love that. Well, you have some friends here who also love LACMA.
Yes. Let's try to make that happen to go to LACMA, because it's like I haven't done that in years, and it's such a fun thing. For me, what I'm celebrating is I just got back from Chicago, one of my favorite cities. It is such a great city, y'all. It is beautiful in the summer. Oh my gosh. I'm super tan from being at the beach in Chicago, the beach along the lake, riding my bike for 26 miles along the lake. It's so clean. The public transportation is organized. I loved it. I had a great time. And one of the highlights of the trip was, which is so funny, is actually seeing two stand-up comics from LA, but seeing them in Chicago. So I got to see Marcela Arguello, who you all know. I love Marcela. She's phenomenal. She's got an HBO special that's a few years old, but it still slaps. And she's great. You all should definitely check her out if you ever are in Chicago, because that's where she's based now, or when she's touring. And then I also got to see Ross Hernandez, who is another awesome comic that I love, trans comic that has an amazing podcast called Ghosted. So it was really beautiful to just be in spaces where we get to forget for a little bit the horrors that are outside of us, and we get to laugh. And both of these comics are aware, they're conscious, and they're just a joy. So that's what I'm celebrating, is being able to laugh and to visit an amazing city.
So weird, Brenda. That's mine. My matracas this week are the same. Yeah, really interesting. I put down folks that keep us laughing during these times. And I also wrote down Marcela. I also wrote down Roz. I included May Martin, Naida. But I've just been watching so much just funny content, and it's super helpful. Some of the things are just ridiculous. Some of these skits online are super funny, and there are some up and coming like creators that I think are really odd and interesting and fun to watch. And so I want to shout one out. Her name is Nora Cote. She's an online creator, and what she does, I don't know if you guys have all seen this, but she takes these old cartoons from when we were kids, like Bugs Bunny and Snoopy, and she finds these scenes where they're doing these ridiculous dances. And then she's a professional dancer, and she mimics the dance moves from these cartoons. And I'm telling you, it is the best of all time. Like, it's just an instant mood lifter, so creative, so funny. And it makes me really appreciate people who dive into this sort of comedic world, because it's not easy to make people laugh. And so shout out matracas to all of these folks that we've named who keep us laughing through difficult times.
I love it. Please, let's include a link in the show notes for this because it sounds wonderful. I love that.
Okay, and so what is inspiring us this week? What's our inspiración? Let's hear it. Shall we start today with Michelle?
I'm going to do an inspiration. I'll do a recommendation. So inspiration, somebody sent me the book Leader as Healer recently. And so I've been reading it, and I've been thinking a lot about what is the future of leadership? What is the future of where I see people going in the ways that they lead movements and organizations and all of this? And I really believe that though it may not feel like it right now with everything that's happening, I really believe there's going to be a surge of leaders who are just like, I can't do this anymore, and will be seeking healing-centered leadership. So I'm being inspired by the book, and just really it's allowing me to kind of like, I'll read a chapter and kind of like let my mind kind of wander for like, what does this mean? How can I prepare for there being spaces for people to be received when they're ready to want to lead in more of that way? So the book is inspiring me and giving me places to dream. And then I want to make a recommendation. So I was trying to remember, because I'm an old school Tamarindo listener. So I was like, how did I find this podcast? What was it about? And I had an aha moment the other day, and I remembered there's a podcast that doesn't exist anymore, Latinos Who Lunch.
Oh, and yes, I remember it. And
I was like, oh my gosh, I think that must be where I first, because I was obsessed with that podcast. It was when I first started listening to podcasts. So I decided to go back and listen to some of their old episodes. And I did listen to the one that, Luis at the time, it was the two of you that were there. And Babelito's laugh, I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that laugh was so good. Fav, like the whole thing. So I now am going back and re-listening to Latinos Who Lunch. So I just put that out there as a recommendation. They always made me laugh out loud. Hearing them laugh again and hearing you all talking, I was like, I got to go back and do some more of that. So I'm also re-listening to Latinos Who Lunch right now.
I love it. I loved that show.
Yeah, come back. That was such a great show. And what a loss when that podcast ended. But yeah, it was beautiful. And yeah, great people. Love that. Takes me right back to actually like being in Vegas and recording there with them. It was so fun. Love that.
So cool. And it's so cool to still see Fabi's art everywhere, right? To see all of the cars and the piñatas, and it's just awesome.
Yes, very special, very special. I'll talk about who inspired me this week. So the photographer Dalia Goches, who recently curated an art show and fundraiser that raised, it did $10,000 in sales, and they donated half of it. So $5,000 were donated to immigrant rights organizations. So she brought together all these artists to showcase. And her photography is phenomenal. You all should check it out. I had the pleasure of having her take pictures of me and Ana Sheila at the time, a couple of years ago, and it underscored that modeling is a true talent, because we were terrible models. But when she has great models, you should see the phenomenal work that she does. So check out Dalia Goches, and just what an inspiration. And I'm inspired by so many other people that are like doing whatever they can to try to raise money and elevate what's happening to our communities, and just finding ways to uplift and find solutions. So I think that's also very inspiring.
Yes, I love that. And I'm going to go and look at it right after this. For me, this is going to be a personal one. I'm in this moment. I'm learning so much, you guys, about being a parent, being a mother, all of these things. These are new to me. And being that labor is around the corner for me, there's so much fear. So much fear. I know the internet wants you to be calm and peaceful and zen and have a beautiful hypnobirth, but let's be real, it's scary. And the medical system is very difficult to navigate and very scary to navigate as a woman, as a Latina. And a lot of our families, they're a little bit old school. Maybe they're not supporting us in the way that we would like. And so there's sort of this confusion about the decisions that you're making to keep yourself safe in this moment. And what I did is I started interviewing doulas. And I am just so inspired by these folks. I have to tell you, what an incredible job. I didn't even really understand what a doula did before this point, but essentially they're there to be your support system, your advocate, the birthing parent's advocate. And you need it so much, and I've met all of these people who do this, and day in and day out, they are at any given moment, 4:00 in the morning, driving to the hospital to be beside a complete stranger in their hardest, most vulnerable, most naked, literal moment, to help them feel confident in what the most incredible thing that you're doing, right? And that is not an easy job. We're talking about, the realities of birth here. And that's what this person is choosing to do. And it is really a phenomenal, phenomenal job. And I just feel I personally don't know if I could do it. So I want to just give a massive shout out and I just say that I'm so inspired by people who are in the birthing field. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, as you're describing it, I'm thinking how this is not the same, right? But the role of like a wedding planner at a wedding, how they're crucial because,
yes.
And I've never had one, but I know that like the planning of a wedding, like as the bride, you're in it. So it's difficult to also be thinking logistics as you're experiencing it. So we're really asking a lot of birthing parents, birthing people to be like thinking of logistics and decisions and things while they're, in labor. So it does seem like such a beautiful assist and support that a doula can provide in that way. So I hope you hire one and it works out.
Yes, I did. And I just want to, last tidbit here as Latinas talking to one another, I just want to say, this was very difficult to explain to my family. They're like, you are paying a person to sit next to you and support you because that's our job as your family. What is going on? But, I sort of had to make that decision for myself of like, am I going to feel really supported in the way that I need in that moment? And, as much as I would like to think so, I really need to guarantee so. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I made that choice.
Right. Because no matter what, when it's family, there's judgment there, right? There's your pressure there. But if there's like this third party advocate, I love it. This is great. Well, fabulous. This has been such a great conversation. There's so many nuggets in here for our listeners. I hope you all walk away with inspiración, with things to follow up on, with clarity on how you might explore a career pivot. Lastly, Michelle, is there anything you'd like to let our listeners know about, or how can folks find you? What else do you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me and for letting me be a part of this conversation with you all. Folks can head to my website, michelleseijas.com, and you can learn more about my one-on-one coaching, where I support leaders with growing their confidence, really valuing their strengths and having a clear vision for their life and their career. I also do a lot of group coaching, supporting maybe leadership development for a group of folks within an organization. And also right now, with everything that's happening, a lot of folks are also just like, can you come in and help us learn how to regulate our nervous systems, find calm and reduce stress in the midst of everything that's happening? So I've been doing that in group settings as well. And then keynotes and workshops. Happy to be a part of anyone's events and being able to do these conversations on a larger scale. So you can find all that at michelleseijas.com. You can find me on Instagram at Thriving Chingona or on LinkedIn at Michelle Seijas, EDD.
Thriving Chingona. I love it. Okay. With that, y'all, we're going to take a break. As you know, there's a baby coming. It's also summer. We're taking a little short break, but we'll be back in your ears soon. Thank you so much for listening. Please, if you can, write us a short review. It means so much to us. Share this episode with a friend. All of that really, really helps us. And we really, truly love that you are all here listening. With that, ponte un suéter, even though it's 90 degrees outside.
Y saludos a la familia, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Tamarindo Podcast is Brenda Gonzalez and Delsy Sandoval. We are also the show's executive producers. Jeff Ricards wrote our theme song. Sonoro Media's Karina Riveroll provides production support, and Cliva Torres edits our episodes for YouTube. The best way to support our work is to rate and review Tamarindo or share an episode with a friend. Get in touch with us at tamarindopodcast.com.
Sonoro. Why choose between the Nasdaq 100 and Bitcoin exposure when you can have both? For those seeking to combine traditional markets and Bitcoin exposure without the complexities of digital wallets or direct token ownership, the OOQB ETF from Volatility Shares may provide a solution. Consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses carefully before investing. Read the prospectus at volatilityshares.com. OOQB does not invest directly in Bitcoin but gains exposure through futures contracts. Foresight Fund Services, LLC is the distributor.